She was 10 years old.
At the tender age of 10, Britney was already using her budding sexuality to attract an audience.
10 years old. That is not commentary. That is not a fan theory. That aired on national television with a studio audience, with a host, with cameras, and nobody in that room flinched.
There is nothing more interesting to adult men than the development of an adolescent female. We are hardwired to recognize that.
They said that out loud about a child on television. And years later, years after that little girl became the most famous woman on the planet, her name showed up in Jeffrey Epstein's private emails. While she was locked in a psychiatric hospital, while men in suits were arguing about who controlled her money, her children, her body, her mind.
You have the most adorable, pretty eyes. You have a boyfriend?
No, sir.
How about me?
That is what the world decided a 10-year-old girl was for. And here's the question nobody is asking out loud. What does it feel like to be that girl? What does it do to a person, to a child, when the very system that is supposed to protect you decides instead to price you? That is what this video is about. Not the gossip, not the DUI headlines, the feeling, the pattern, the machine, and what it costs the people it chews up. Before we get into files and emails and names, I need you to understand something foundational, because without this, none of what comes after makes complete sense. There is a moment in a documentary, a real, aired, televised documentary, where commentators and adult men sit on camera and describe a 10-year-old Britney Spears in terms that should make your skin crawl off your body.
She comes out in a very provocative gown with high heels, and all of a sudden that little girl knocks you right off your ass.
That was not a predator whispering in a back room. That was broadcast media. That was the culture. That was the system operating in full daylight, doing exactly what it was designed to do, turning a child into a commodity and calling it entertainment. Now pause and think about what that girl experienced in that moment. She is 10 years old. She has been coached, dressed, styled, and placed under lights. She has been told to perform. She has no framework to understand what sexuality means in the way these men in the audience are applying it to her body. She just knows she wants to sing. She just knows she wants to win. She just knows that when she performs, people smile and applaud, and that feels like love. That is what they exploit, that need, that innocence, that hunger for approval.
A lot of sexual energy that is oozing out of that little girl. She can't possibly manage that kind of sexuality. So as she grows up, you're going to see this split between Britney, sexual Britney, and then there's Britney.
Read that back slowly. They predicted her breakdown in the same breath they were describing her as a product. They knew the split was coming. They knew what they were doing to her would fracture her. They said it out loud and kept going anyway. That is not negligence. That is not a different era with different norms. That is a system that understood exactly what it was building and chose to build it anyway, because the profit was worth more than the person. Britney Spears entered that machine as a little girl from Kentwood, Louisiana. She came out as an industry, and the moment she started to crack under the weight of what they had built her into, the moment she stopped being useful in the way they needed, they did not help her. They tightened the leash. Now here is where the story shifts from heartbreaking to something darker. Because Britney's story is not just about Hollywood being unkind to young women. It is about a specific network of people with specific financial interests making specific decisions about her life, her money, her body, and her freedom. And some of those people connect to names you have heard before. In February 2008, after what was described publicly as a breakdown, the hospitalization, the shaved head, all of it her father, Jamie Spears, petitioned a California court and was granted something called a conservatorship. That means Britney Spears, an adult woman, was handed over legally. Her money, her medical care, her career, her relationships, her daily schedule, someone else decided all of it for 13 years. Think about what that means for someone who has already spent her entire life being controlled by a system that commodified her at age 10. She never had autonomy. She went from her parents telling her what to do, to managers telling her what to do, to the conservatorship telling her what to do. She was never once just a person making her own choices. And in her memoir, The Woman in Me, she described what that actually felt like from the inside. She wrote that she was locked in rooms, that she could not drive, that she could not draw a bath in private, that she was placed on lithium, a heavy psychiatric drug, without her full and informed consent. The same drug, she noted, that drove her grandmother to suicide. Can you imagine? Being medicated against your will for over a decade, not knowing what your own unmedicated mind even feels like anymore, not being allowed to trust your own perception of your own experience because the system has decided that your perception is the problem. That is not recovery. That is captivity with better PR. Now, two names kept surfacing when people started digging into how that conservatorship was constructed. One is Lou Taylor, a Hollywood management executive running a firm called TriStar. Taylor allegedly played a key architectural role in building the conservatorship around Britney. And Lou Taylor's client list? It included some of the biggest names in entertainment, the Kardashian family businesses, Diddy. And from what court documents filed in 2020 and 2021 show, she was deeply embedded in the financial apparatus of all of them. The same woman, the same firm, Britney's conservatorship, Diddy's management, the Kardashian empire. And then the Epstein files opened. In early 2026, a fresh batch of Epstein documents became publicly available, and the internet exploded. The claim going most viral was that Britney Spears was mentioned 115 times in the files. Fact-checkers including IB Times UK and Factually.co went through what was publicly released and said they could not verify a verified criminal connection tying her to Epstein as a participant. And that is important context. I am not going to hand you speculation and call it fact, but here is what they did not debunk. Here is what is sitting in the documents. Documented, real. In the Epstein files, there are emails between Jeffrey Epstein and a man named Mark Tramo, an adjunct professor at UCLA with a background in neurology and music-related research. In those emails, Tramo is discussing securing funding for what the documents describe as a project relating to Britney Spears. Her child custody situation comes up in the same conversation. Now, while those emails were being written, Britney Spears was being held at the UCLA Resnick Psychiatric Hospital, the same university system where Tramo worked. She was not there voluntarily. Multiple sources confirmed she was kept there against her will. A man connected to Epstein was emailing about a project involving Britney's name and her children while she sat locked in a room at his university and could not leave.
Britney Spears mentioned. Now, in the Epstein files, you can find emails that are duplicates of each other, but different things are redacted. That happened with this email.
There is also a reference in those emails to a neonatal ICU project connected to her name. Nobody has been able to fully explain what that means in the context of a woman who had already given birth to both of her children. And then there is TMZ. Epstein reportedly said on record that Harvey Levin, the CEO of TMZ, was, and this is paraphrased from the files, a good friend of mine.
Fast forward to 2026. Who is leading the media charge on Britney's DUI story? TMZ.
The same media company connected to the same man whose name sits in Epstein correspondence is the loudest voice right now, telling the world that Britney Spears is out of control and cannot be trusted to manage her own life. Connect those dots yourself. Now, I want to slow down here, because this is the part most coverage skips entirely. Everyone wants to talk about the names and the money and the documents. Nobody wants to sit with what this actually does to a human being. What does it feel like to be Britney Spears? You are 10 years old and men on television are discussing your body as though your body belongs to them. You do not have the language to name what is wrong with that. You just feel something is off. But everyone around you is smiling. The lights are bright. The applause is loud. And you have been taught by every adult in your life that this is success. This is what you were born to do. So you perform. You keep performing. Because performing is the only version of yourself that anyone has ever celebrated.
Britney was transformed, pouring on a sexy southern charm the judges had never seen in a package so small.
You grow up inside that machine. Teenager, then global superstar, then product, then problem. The moment your value starts to dip, the moment you stop being perfectly compliant, the moment the cracks start showing, the system does not offer you compassion. It offers you control, a conservatorship, a handler, a medical chart that someone else fills out. And here is what victims of systemic exploitation, especially those groomed from childhood, consistently describe. They describe a profound inability to trust their own mind, because the people who were supposed to love them were the ones who used them. So how do you ever know who is safe? How do you ever sign a document again? How do you voluntarily walk into a facility when the last time someone put you in a facility, they kept you there against your will and used your name in emails to a man like Jeffrey Epstein? A close source told News Nation in March 2026 she has very big trust issues. She will not sign anything anymore because of the last conservatorship. Of course, she will not. That is not erratic behavior. That is a woman whose entire life has taught her that signing things is how you lose yourself. Every time she trusted the system took something from her. Her body was commodified at 10. Her freedom was stripped at 26. Her children, her money, her medical decisions handed to someone else. And through all of it, her name somehow ended up in the private correspondence of the most notorious predator in modern American history. What would that do to you? Here is the bigger frame that ties all of this together. Britney Spears was not a random name to end up in those files. The system that built her and the network that surrounded Epstein operated on the same logic. Find them young, make them valuable, control the access, control the narrative, and when they start to break, or worse, when they start to talk, control the story.
Because when we tell you that it's all of them, I mean it's all of them.
Think about the audition room dynamic. Little girls brought in by parents who believe in their child's talent. Adults in positions of power who decide not just whether you can sing, but whether you are worth investing in, what you look like, how you move, whether you have it, what it means to men who see a 10-year-old and describe her as sexually energized. That is the entry point. That is where the selection happens. And what Epstein's network did at a far darker level operated on that same fundamental transaction. Value assigned to a young female body by powerful men who controlled access to resources, fame, protection. The documentary footage of Britney at 10 men on camera openly analyzing her sexuality, that is not a side note. That is the operating system. That is how the machine works. And the Epstein emails referencing her name while she sat locked in a hospital room, that is the same machine further down the road, still operating. She was never outside of it. From the Star Search stage to the UCLA psychiatric ward to her name appearing in the correspondence of Jeffrey Epstein, the thread never broke. The machine never released her.
No, this is what was going on and being normalized.
And here is the cruelest part of all of this. The people inside that machine, the handlers, the managers, the executives, the men with cameras, they knew. They said it on television. They predicted the split in her personality. They knew that what they were doing to her would eventually fracture her, and they called it entertainment and kept filming. I want to take a moment to talk about something that most people do not fully understand, and that is what 13 years of heavy lithium use actually does to a person's brain. Britney described in her memoir being placed on lithium without her full and informed consent. Heavy doses, consistent for over a decade. Sustained high-dose lithium use over a long period of time can cause lasting neurological damage. That is documented medical fact. It affects memory, coordination, emotional regulation, cognitive function. The damage can be permanent. So when people mock the way she moves now, when they mock her speech patterns, her social media posts, the captions that make fans panic, I need those people to sit with this for a moment. She was medicated heavily against her will for over a decade by the same conservatorship that was allegedly architected by a woman connected to Epstein's world through Lou Taylor's management network. They controlled what she took into her own body for 13 years.
There's footage from the reference content in this video of another artist describing how doctors tried to put them on similarly extreme doses of psychiatric medication.
They would have had them right where they wanted them. That is the sentence. That is the whole story in one line. A system that profits from your performance needs you performing. A system that profits from your silence needs you silent. And a system that profits from your compliance will medicate you into compliance if your free will becomes inconvenient. Britney Spears is what happens when all three of those things happen to the same person, starting at 10 years old, and the whole world watches and calls it pop culture. On March 5th, 2026, California Highway Patrol pulled over a BMW convertible weaving through Ventura County. Britney Spears failed the field sobriety test. Blood was drawn. Car was impounded. She was booked on suspicion of DUI and released the following morning. Court date set for May 4th in Ventura County Superior Court.
Britney Spears was arrested Wednesday night, according to information from Ventura County, California authorities.
The media response was immediate. Helicopters over her house. X is running to CNN for interviews. Doctors who have never treated her going on camera to speculate about a bipolar diagnosis that has never been publicly confirmed. And what was buried in the coverage? The fact that this arrest happened just days after Britney was granted a restraining order against a man who had been stalking her since 2013. Over a decade, a man who had been hunting her for 13 years. And the same week she finally got legal protection against him, her DUI became the headline.
Booking information obtained by CNN shows that the pop star was stopped by the California Highway Patrol around 9:30 p.m.
Now, should she have been driving in that condition? No, that is not what I am arguing. What I am saying is that a woman who was systematically exploited as a child, controlled as an adult, medicated without consent, financially drained by the people who claimed to protect her, and whose name appeared in Epstein's private emails. That woman having a crisis is not a punchline. She is not crazy. She is not a cautionary tale. She is what happens when the machine works exactly as designed, and the girl inside it is not given a single safe exit. The question is whether this time finally someone around her actually wants to give her one. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the people around her now are trustworthy? And if you want us to build out the full Lou Taylor and Kardashian financial connection as its own deep dive episode, type money trail below. We will go all the way in on that one. Stay locked in. We will see you in the next one.